thousands of Israelis out on the streets. So he's fought these domestic political distractions, the pressure internationally not to have high Palestinian casualties in the West Bank. At the same time, there's the big prize for him, which is making a deal involving the United States and Saudi Arabia to normalize relations. That has been for him his golden prize, if you will. And it does seem as if it's caused him, doesn't explain his intelligence services, but drops of the ball here, but it does appear to have caused him to divert some of his attention in this hugely pressured situation.
Nick, thank you as always. Next on GPS, Israel's former Foreign Minister and Justice Minister, Tzipi Livni, when we come back. Yesterday's attacks on Israel came 50 years plus 1 day after another set of surprise attacks. The ones that began the 1973 Yom Kippur War. We continue our coverage with Tzipi Livni, Israel's former Foreign Minister and Justice Minister. She joins me from Tel Aviv. Welcome, Tzipi Livni. Let me ask you to begin with about the magnitude of this intelligence and security failure, because we are comparing it often to the Yom Kippur War, but in some ways it strikes me as even greater. Yom Kippur War was a failure to see what was happening in foreign capitals. This is Gaza. This is a place that Israel occupied for decades. This is a place that Israel still has a tight blockade on, security controls on. What do you think happened? How was the IDF taken so much by surprise?
Well, it took us by surprise, unfortunately, but yet there is time, there will be time for inquiries the day after. But I want to make another difference between the situation now and the Yom Kippur War, because we are speaking about a war now, but Hamas didn't wage war. In war you have some limitations, rules, laws. What Hamas did was a massacre in a dreadful manner against civilians, children, women, families. So when we are speaking about asymmetrical war between a state, a country, and terrorist organization, it's not just, something very technical. This is what we are facing. Terrorist organizations that are acting against civilians in a very cruel manner. And this is what is happening in Israel for the last 2 days.
Do you think that the taking of the hostages will change the IDF's calculation about how it can retaliate?
Well, it's clear that this is an issue that is very sensitive to every Israeli. We showed it also in the past. And I'm sure that Hamas decided to do so in order to get some ammunition or immunity from Israeli retaliation. But this is the decisions that the Israeli cabinet need to make. But I think that something important need to be explained these days, because people tend to take this as part of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's not. I want to say that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is based on a national conflict between two national movements, and it is hopefully solvable. But Hamas, in a way, represents a religious conflict that is not solvable. And I know that there are those saying that using violence, even in a dreadful manner, is the only way to achieve freedom or achievement to your peoples, but this is not the situation in Gaza. Israel left Gaza, we pulled out our forces, we dismantled all the settlements, and in order to get legitimacy and to open Gaza, and now there is no Israeli soldier in Gaza or any settlement, they need to abide or to accept the requirement of the quartet. The entire world, including US and Russia, the UN and EU, said that Hamas can get legitimacy only if they stop, renounce violence and terrorism, accept Oslo Agreement, abide to it, and accept the right of Israel to exist, and they are not willing to do so. So it is important that we bear it in mind when people are speaking about what Israel needs to do, and for those of us believing in peace, Hamas is an obstacle to peace. It's not just a tactical matter now, it's strategic matter.
You pointed out something important, which is this conflict is unlike the 73 one, not between the Arab nations and Israel. And I wanted to know, as a former foreign minister, you must be watching this carefully, what is your sense of the reaction of the Arab countries who would, certainly decades ago, something like this would have happened. One assumes the Arab countries would have cheered on, they would have allowed demonstrations on the streets. I'm struck by the fact that you do not have much of that. I wanted your thoughts on it.
Yes, it's not the first time. We saw the division in our region in the last few years, and even more. The division is not between the Arab world and Israel, but it's between the moderates in the region, the more pragmatics, and the extremists, and the religious Islamist group, and rock states like Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. So it's different camps in a way in the region. And therefore for them, Hamas, that represent this kind of religious Islamist ideology of Muslim Brotherhood and others, for them it's not winning something. It's something that can have an impact within their own countries. And therefore it's clear that Hamas doesn't represent any Arab cause and any Palestinian cause. And speaking, if I may, also about the international community, I think that it's time to understand that when this kind of terrorist organization has a political branch and a military branch, it's the same. And we see it with Hamas, with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are abusing their political power, they are abusing the democratic rules to get more and more power and to abuse it. Sometimes against others, against Israel, to ignite the region, or even against their own citizens. And this is what we see in Gaza and in Lebanon. And therefore, when my expectations from the international community, and really the support coming from the international community and the United States and President Biden is touching and important. But let's also speak about the future. I think that it's time to recognize what we are facing, what is the meaning of Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist organizations that represent unsolvable religious conflict, and not to legitimize their political branch in the future as well.
Zipi Livni, thank you as always for your perspective on a day of real tragedy for Israel. Thank you. When we come back, we will hear from a Palestinian point of view, from the former Minister of Information of the Palestinian Authority, Mustafa Barghouti. According to reporting by Al Jazeera, the leader of Hamas has said the group is on the verge of a great victory after its incursion into Israeli territory. Political leader Ismail Haniyeh has blamed the violence squarely on Israel's occupation of Palestinian land. For another Palestinian viewpoint, I wanted to bring in Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. He is a former information minister for the Palestinian government, which is in control of parts of the West Bank but does not control Gaza. Welcome, Minister. I again want to just make sure that viewers understand that the Palestinian Authority has been an opponent of Hamas, so you are not in any way affiliated with Hamas. You represent the Palestinian Authority, which has control over parts of the West Bank. All that said, what is your reaction to what you have seen so far?
Well, first of all, I am not part of the Palestinian Authority. As a matter of fact, I represent a democratic Palestinian movement called Palestinian National Initiative, which is non-Fatah and non-Hamas. And of course, I am not affiliated with Hamas. But I think this situation that has evolved is a direct result of the continuation of the longest occupation in modern history. Israeli occupation of Palestinian land since 1967. This is 56 years of occupation that has transformed into a system of apartheid, a much worse apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa. Yes, maybe Hamas did not recognize Israel, but the PLO did, and the Palestinian Authority did. What did they get? Nothing. Since 2014, the Israeli governments would not even meet with Palestinians. And what you see today is a reaction to several things. First of all, settlers' terrorist attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank that has evicted already 20 communities in an act of ethnic cleansing. 248 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli army and settlers in the West Bank, including 40 children. Attacks on the holy sites, the Muslim and Christian holy sites by Israeli extremists, as well as declaration of Netanyahu that he will liquidate the Palestinian rights and the Palestinian cause by normalization with Arab countries. And he dared even to go to the United Nations and carried in the United Nations a map of Israel, which included the whole of the West Bank, all of Gaza, all of Jerusalem, as well as the Golan Heights. He declared the annexation of the occupied territories. So of course Palestinians turn to resistance because they see that this is the only way for them to get their rights. The question here is not about dehumanizing Palestinians as is happening and calling them terrorists. It's about asking the question, why the United States supports Ukraine in fighting what they call occupation, while here they are supporting the occupier who continues to occupy us.
But let me ask you, if that is the analogy you wish to draw, what Hamas is doing is they're targeting Israeli civilians, women, children, grandmothers.
No, they are not.
Is that not a classic terror? Isn't that classic terrorism? They're not fighting the Israeli government. They're fighting ordinary people.
That's one way of putting it, but it's not true. I think Hamas mainly attacked military establishments, military installations. And most of the people they have arrested and taken as war prisoners are military people. I do not accept attacking any civilian. I do not accept that Israelis attack our civilians, but look at what Israeli planes are doing now in Gaza. They are bombarding houses. They're bringing down to earth, and you've shown that on your screen. Whole apartments, whole buildings, high-rise buildings are brought down to the ground, and we already are receiving reports about families who are killed. 9 people in one family, 10 people in another family, including children. I do not want any civilian to be hurt, neither by Palestinians or by Israelis. But the question is how to end that. Will it end by attacking Gaza Strip another time? Israel has already conducted 5 wars on Gaza. One of them lasted 51 days. They destroyed everything. This did not stop Hamas, did not stop resistance. There is one way to stop any violence, and that is to end the Israeli occupation. And that is for the United States to be fair. They cannot say that Israel has the right to defend itself, but we, the Palestinians, don't have the right to defend ourselves. Let me remind you with the case of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was not only Palestinian, but also an American, a very peaceful journalist. She was shot to death by an Israeli sniper. Was anybody indicted? Was anybody taken to court? No. 52 other journalists were also killed. Our first aid providers are shot at. Our doctors are shot at. This should stop. And the only way to stop it is to tell Israel you have to respect international law, you have to end this illegal occupation, and accept Palestinians as equal human beings.
Let me ask you about the practical reality of what's going to happen here, which you know because you have lived through this, which is this is going to strengthen right-wing forces in Israel. It is going to strengthen the forces that say have no mercy, have a huge military response. Presumably the life of Palestinians in the West Bank will get harder, more checkpoints, more searches. Isn't the practical effect here of all this going to be much worse for the average Palestinian?
Unfortunately, Farid, what you have described is exactly what we already have. Today, the whole West Bank is paralyzed by 560 military Israeli checkpoints. And these checkpoints were there during the last 30 years. We are suffering from a wall that is built on our land. The whole West Bank has been divided in 224 small ghettos, separated from each other. And the settlers are everywhere attacking Palestinians. You speak about right-wing government in Israel. Already Israel is a right-wing government. Israel is already having fascists in its government. Smotrich described himself as a fascist homophobe. And that man, Smotrich, who is also a settler, said that Palestinians have one of three options only: either to immigrate, or accept a life of subjugation to Israelis, or die. This is the Israeli Minister of Finance. Netanyahu never negated these statements. And both Smotrich and Ben-Gvir said that their plan is to annex the West Bank. Can we stop what's going on now? Yes, of course. All these Israelis who are now in Gaza can be released tomorrow, including everybody. If there are civilians, also the civilians. Even the generals of the Israeli army can be released if Israel also accepts to release our 5,300 Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails, including 1,260 Palestinians who are in jail without knowing why, under the so-called administrative detention. They don't know why they are arrested. They are not charged. Their lawyers don't know why they are arrested. And that's the life we have. Look, Farid, we have lived all our lives under occupation. My father lived under occupation. My daughter is living under occupation. We want a time when we, the Palestinians, will be freed. Hamas was not there 30 years ago or 40 years ago. But before that, PLO is described as terrorist. Any Palestinian who struggles for his right or for freedom is described as terrorist. And the question here, do we have the right to struggle for freedom? Do we have the right to struggle for real democracy? Do we have the right to have normal democratic elections, which unfortunately Israel and the United States don't support? I think we are entitled to that. But the unfortunate thing, if we struggle in a military form, we are terrorists. If we struggle in a non-violent way, we are described as violent. If we even resist with words, we are described as provocators. If you support Palestinian and you are a foreigner, they describe you as anti-Semite. And if you are a Jewish person, and there are many of those, who supports Palestinian cause, they call him self-hating Jew. This should end. It doesn't make sense. We should all have equal life. We should all have peace. We should all have justice. And we should all live in dignity. The main way to achieve that is to end occupation, end the system of apartheid that I am sure no Jewish person can be proud of. Time has come for that, and time has come for justice and freedom. If we achieve that, there will be no violence and nobody will be hurt.
Mustafa Barghouti, I thank you for giving us your time and your perspective. When we come back, we will be joined by Naftali Bennett, the former Prime Minister of Israel. Joining me now is Israel's former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. He enlisted in the IDF reserves yesterday after the attacks. Prime Minister, tell us what all this looks like to you on the ground. You must have, I know you've been traveling around the country.
This is very hard to contain, very hard to absorb, such scale and such cruelty. What's been going on is about 30 hours until just a few hours ago, there was a massacre in slow motion going on in dozens of communities in southern Israel where Hamas terrorists went from one home to another, entered the home with their rifles, killed babies point blank, held their rifles, killed the baby, killed the mother, killed the father. In many cases, family closed the shelter door, which is a very thick steel door, so the terrorists could not enter. The terrorists were walking just right outside of the door, telling them it's IDF soldiers, open up. And On the other side of the door, the family is just praying that they go away. When the family doesn't open the door to be murdered, then the Hamas terrorist burns the house, and then smoke enters the room, and then the families have to open the door, and then they're slaughtered, point blank. Imagine that. Imagine we've had situations where a 9-year-old girl is pulled by her hair by the terrorists and kidnapped into Hamastan, the Hamas state that's just a few kilometers from here, from where I'm standing. Imagine mothers trying to defend their children while the dad is out there. Ophir Lipstein, the mayor of this area, a good friend of mine, he put his family in the shelter, and he went out with his pistol to fight the terrorists. He was killed, but his family is saved. We're still waiting to hear what's going on with his son, Nitzan. So many personal stories and friends that have been murdered. This is very personal, and this is not how human beings act. This is an act of monsters.
Let me ask you about the intelligence and security failure, because you're a former prime minister. You have had security briefings. What is your sense of how this happened? Because this is, to my mind, as I've said, this seems more dramatic than 73, because this is Gaza. This is not trying to figure out what's happening in foreign capitals. And secondly, how did the Iron Dome not work as well as it was expected to against these thousands of missiles?
Well, I have to admit that we were surprised, and we're going to have to learn how that happens. But generally in military history, there are always big surprises. Pearl Harbor, Barbarossa, Yom Kippur War. At the end of the day, intelligence can go only so far. What I'm very proud to say is, and see, of meeting just amazing heroes, Israeli heroes, that are not in the army. They 40-year-old men that get on uniform, join, enlist to the reserves, and go out and defend other families across Israel. We have 150% enlisting rate. I'm getting so many calls from people who say, I want to go defend other Israelis. This is a beautiful nation that we have, a courageous nation that's out fighting, and unfortunately, people are dying while defending other people. Just tremendous amount of acts of heroism. And I just met a guy called Ayal. He took 2 bullets into his body, but he saved his family in a kibbutz not far from here. He saved his family from terrorists who were about 15 terrorists, and they were just 4 Israeli civilians, but they had their guns, and they fended off the terrorists until about 5 or 6 hours later, the army finally came.
President Netanyahu says this is going to be a long and difficult war. Do you agree? I mean, again, from the outside, we think the Israeli Defense Forces are so strong that you will be able to do a kind of massive retaliation. Do you think this is going to be long and difficult?
I think it will be long and difficult. I think, not unlike Pearl Harbor, it did not take 2 days for America to get organized, because this war is not against Hamas only. The way I view it is Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, our enemies are one front. They even say that. And the way that we need to operate is by surprise. You don't have to play by their rule book. The fact that Hamas attacked us here doesn't mean we have to go straight to there. It means that we can act however we find right. And I will say that our enemies, from Tehran to Gaza to anywhere that they're trying to hurt us, we're going to get them. It's going to hurt. And we're going to hit them back, because we have a strong nation. And yeah, We took a huge blow, unimaginable, but we're strong and we will prevail.
Naftali Bennett, thank you very much. My apologies for calling Prime Minister Netanyahu President Netanyahu.
Israelis want to volunteer to fight Hamas. A song by Paul Beckman, Palu Rainbow Song, also the new and first leader of humankind and the free world. Created October 16th, 2023. Even though this was recorded a little earlier. After the massacre that occurred in Israel on Saturday, on the 7th of October, remember that date, many Israelis want to, if they can, volunteer to fight Hamas and give them payback for the terrible deed and tragedy they left. Yeah, how could humans be so inhuman? Oh yeah. So many Israelis want to volunteer to fight and put Hamas in its place where it should be. Well, it's needed now more than ever because of what happened. Give them swift justice. Hamas should never exist again. Never, 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 never. It should be dismantled to the core, so it doesn't hurt anybody anymore. So no one ever has to worry about it revealing its ugly face ever again. Well, thus so many Israelis after the massacre on Saturday want to volunteer to be a part of Israel's armed services, or they're already on the list to be a reserve. Well, they just want to fight and to preserve the dignity of Israel, the goodness it represents, the fairness of which it is sent to go by and follow the rules of war, the rules of common etiquette. Try and treat people equally as best you can, but to show bullies who kill and cause mayhem that they need to be put in their proper place. Yeah, isn't that the case? Well, Israel population these days, you see, they want to defend their country, and this is uniting them. They've got to, in the end, defeat Hamas to its core. Defeat Hamas forevermore. Defeat Hamas to its core. Defeat Hamas forevermore. For an explanation of my mainstream name, Paul Beckman, my New Age name, Palu Rainbow Song, and when I utter also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world, please go to Internet Solutions and Songs 24-7 at Palu Rainbow Song bio on YouTube. Then look for a playlist called Movie Song Reviews by Palu. There, look for some videos and song videos that are categorized as a special note. Those will give you a full explanation of all that plus more. Thank you very much. Namaste. I honor the divine in all. And just remember, from the most spiritual point of view, spiritual, not from the viewpoint of the relative world. Everything is fine, everything is all right, everything is always going to be.
One of the realities that officials face here in D.C. is the dysfunction in Congress, and what can be done without a sitting House Speaker, and what would require congressional authorization. That is still an open question, and a senior administration official told CNN that this is a, quote, unique situation, and they are trying to sort out behind the scenes what else is achievable here. That has really been part of the effort here behind the scenes by officials, is trying to determine what kind of military aid they can provide and what assistance and what requests Israel is making. So all of this is still very much unfolding, but for now we know that some assistance is already on the way, and President Biden in that call with Netanyahu assuring him that there is more to come in the coming days and that he will stay in close touch with him as all of this unfolds. Anderson.
Crystal Alvarez from the White House, thanks very much. We're going to take a short break. Our live coverage from Israel continues in just a moment.
Well, my system is failing me. The way that I usually get some video on here that I can record is failing at this point in time. A song by Paul Beckman, Paul Rainbow Song. I've been trying to get it for you, but it's been hit and miss, more miss than hit. This song's gonna call Humanity. Portions of humanity stop acting like barbarians. Treat people with respect. Created October 8th, 2023. Portions of humanity stop acting like barbarians and treat people with respect. That means don't indiscriminately kill them when you see them on the street. Don't go to gatherings they're having and massacre everyone. Don't take people hostage. Leave them alone. Get out of Israel. Go back to the Gaza Strip if that's where you came from. Act with respect towards human beings from now on. Take my advice. I insist on it. For I am the new and first leader of humankind and the free world. Yes, that's right. Yeah, right.